Hey guys, welcome back to my channel today. In today's video, we are going to be ranking my Pat McGrath Labs eyeshadow palettes. Now, I actually currently have 12 palettes in my collection right now, and I often get a ton of questions as to which palettes are worth buying, especially at this Pat McGrath luxury price point. So let's dive into all of these rankings, and these are all palettes that I enjoy and love, but I do have some clear favorites over my other ones because depending on color story and formulation, I do gravitate towards some compared to others. If you want to know my thoughts on all of these palettes and how they rank in my collection currently, then just keep watching. Let's get right on into this ranking. If you guys are new to me or my channel, my name is Jena and I am a Canadian high-end and luxury beauty reviewer. This is my niche. I am very passionate about this price point in particular when it comes to makeup because it is ultra expensive at times. So my job is to purchase stuff, review it for you so that if it sucks, you can avoid it, and if it's actually good, you can invest your money wisely. In the 12th position for this ranking, we do have Rose Decadence from Pat McGrath Labs. Now this is a palette that is definitely my least grabbed and my least used because for some reason I think that this color story, although beautiful, there are quite a few shades in here that I think, here I'm just going to show you a little bit better. This one has a magnetic snap closure, so it does snap pretty fast, but this one is a beautiful color story, don't get me wrong, but I do think that she has done quite a few rose themed palettes now. With my other rose palettes from Pat McGrath, I feel like I grab those a lot more, and because of that, I don't grab this one as much. So it could just be that this is like the third palette that I own that has a rose theme. It's just one too many, but I also find that for some reason, I'm a packaging girl at heart, and with Pat McGrath being this expensive, she actually kills it with packaging also, but this packaging fell short for me. It is a cardboard packaging style, so she definitely tried to save us money as a consumer because packaging is often very expensive when it comes to manufacturing a product, often more expensive than the product itself, but I would reckon what? Okay, let's just keep going. But I would justify those price points with a killer packaging because now we're talking about extreme investments here. This is not an extreme investment. This is definitely more of the mid-range for her brand. The formulation on this one is actually surprising because she has actually, in my opinion, when she's picked out other 6-pan palettes before, I have found that the formulation, especially with the mattes, has been, I would say, compromised. I don't know. It's not the same as the 10-pan lacquer packaging that I love, but it also is not as expensive. But still, I don't think that the quality has to go down that much. We're still paying quite a bit of money, even just to get a 6-pan. So this is one, luckily, that has improved significantly. I think the only thing that I would say is that the mattes are smooth, but they're like not quite as smooth as her other formulations, her mattes in her 10-pan palettes. So this is in 12th position because of packaging, because I have quite a few other rose things from her that I grab more, and because this formulation is not quite as good as what she can do. Now let's get into palette number 11. Now we are talking about our first quad here. This is the Nocturnal Nirvana Holiday Quad. This is one of the Blitz Astral quads. She did come out with 3 of these last year, and I was so excited for that because these are her specialty formulas. These consist of her Blitz Astral formulations, which are very unique to her brand. And the reason why this one is ranked so low doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the formulation is bad or anything. It's just that this, to me, is much more of, in my opinion, either a one and done shadow or it's an accompaniment palette to a different palette, because I don't think I would put like all 3 of those, let's say blue, purple, and green together necessarily, but that's also probably just a preference thing. I think the gold here really stabilizes this palette. You can put gold and blue, gold and green, gold and purple, or just one of the shades all over. But I find when I'm using this that it really is in addition to another palette that I'm using. So this one, I would say color story wise, brings it down to number 11, but I still enjoy this one a lot. Now, palette number 10 is an interesting story because, as you guys know, I have received 2 palettes by accident this year, which has been crazy. I really think I'm on this lucky streak and should be winning the lottery or something. This is a palette that I initially purchased last year and really didn't pick it up a ton, but then it came in my Sephora haul this year. Now I have a second one. I actually didn't reorder this. One of my friends got my original one, and then I just happened to get it again because of a packaging error for my Sephora order. This is palette number 10. This is Iconic Illumination, also from the 3 palettes that were released last holiday. This is part of her Blitz Astral formulations also, and I would say this is actually a very easy palette to put together. Compared to Nocturnal Nirvana, this is one that I can see looks pretty quickly. I can use this whole palette. I can use, of course, one shade at a time or in accompaniment with something else, but this is a palette that I think you can absolutely use on your own. This is still one that I haven't picked up a ton just because I feel like this is one that doesn't grab me as much from her line as other palettes do. We will talk about those, of course, but given that this is a palette that I initially didn't grab a ton, I'm really trying to use it a bit more now because of the mistake that happened. I feel like it's fate that I'm supposed to own this thing. I'm going to be making more of an effort, but this is definitely a beautiful palette, and this is ranked number 10. Palette number 9 is the Fleur Fantasia quad from this year's holiday Celestial Divinity collection. Now, the quads that she released this year are not comprising of the Blitz Astral shades. They are just some of her new specialty shades or shimmers or some mattes as well. There's also a couple satins in some of them. So this is much more of, what would I say? Definitely still a beautiful palette, but one that I think a lot of us wanted the Blitz Astral product this year. I don't think she's put the Blitz Astral in any product this year, as far as I understand it. Nonetheless, this is still a quad that I think is gorgeous. However, it's much more of a unicorny, springtime kind of vibe, and I have to be in a specific mood, I think, to pick this one up. Not that it is bad though, like I said, I feel like all of these palettes, if they're in my collection for a reason, they're there because I enjoy them. But I find that this is one that I'm not picking up as much as some of her other holiday releases, just because of that purpose. It could be because we're kind of off season right now, so we're in the winter right now. The purple shade at the top is definitely one of my favorites. I'll show it to you swatched here. It is a little bit more muted though, so that's one thing that I think I wanted more purple behind it. It's definitely really light and glowy, but I wish that it was just a little bit more opaque, I think. So that is partially it. This shade here is really beautiful. It's very shimmery as well. And then this peach here is also really nice. It's also one that you have to build up on the lid though. It's a little bit more light. So this one is ranked in number 9. Palette number 8 is actually the last holiday palette from last year's quads. This is Ritualistic Rose, and this I believe never hit Sephora unless it did temporarily. I'm trying to remember, maybe it did a little bit, but at the beginning, it definitely wasn't there. I think it was a Pat McGrath website exclusive. This is an interesting palette though, because this is one that I would consider like Pat McGrath's really topper shades. To me, they're all Blitz Astral, just like the other 2 from last year, but they do have an interesting texture to them. They're very glitter heavy. There's quite a bit of fallout to them also. So I find that this is one that I am using quite a bit in addition to other palettes. So this is the quad over here. I'm just showing you guys once again. The brown is really nice because it does anchor the look. You can absolutely use this palette by itself, but I just find because of the textures of these, I do like to have some kind of shadows underneath them to give them some oomph on the eye, because otherwise they look fairly sheer. So this is definitely ranked in number 8 position because it's more of an accessory palette for sure compared to some of her other ones. This one is still beautiful, of course, but I find that I'm using this one a lot with my Divine Rose 1 and Divine Rose 2 palettes as topper shades to those looks. Palette number 7 also comes from this year's Celestial Divinity collection for the holiday. This is the Risque Rose quad. This quad is actually made in Italy, which is interesting because the other 2 from this year's collection are not. They are made in the US. So it's interesting because some of these textures actually imitate the smoothness of her Mothership palettes, which are made in Italy. So very, very interesting. And this is ranked in 7th because, first of all, this right side, you guys, I am dead over. I absolutely love both of these two shades. I'm going to swatch them because they're gorgeous. Definitely like the one that is silvery is very like Blitz Astral-like in nature. And then this is a gorgeous metallic pink. The brown and the neon pink in here, I'm not using as much in this quad. I'm going to be totally honest with you. And you can see that they've barely been dented in, I would say. So I'm kind of giving myself away for sure, but this quad is still beautiful. It's just that because of that other half not being, you know, the two shades I'm picking up a ton, it's why it's ranked where it is. But definitely a gorgeous palette. Out of the three, if you're wanting the best formulation for this year, that is the most like the Mothership original 10-pan palettes, definitely consider this one because it is made in Italy, and those two on the right, very much like her special shades in her other palettes. So pretty, but because of that left side, ranked in 7th position. The palette in number 6 position, so halfway to the top now, is the first 10-pan Mothership palette that I have in my collection currently, and this is Bronze Seduction. This is one that I did get back into my collection recently, also from a mistake in packing, except this time it was from the Pat McGrath warehouse. I did end up ordering the Sublime number 2 Mothership palette from the Black Friday event, and this came in the package also. Very interesting because I did do a review on this, and I did not think that for the retail price of this bad boy, it was worth it. Now, this is why it's ranked where it is. I do think it is still an amazing palette. I do think that the color story is great, but I do think we do have quite a few of these similar shades besides the Astrals in this one. We do have quite a few of these shades in our collections already. So at the 200 Canadian dollar price point, definitely something to consider when investing in this, because if you do have quite a few browns, berries, which you probably do, like that red one here, this one I've seen in a ton of holiday palettes, you guys, this is one to consider and just make sure that you are actually going to use it for that price. If you end up getting it on an event like Black Friday where it's 40, 50% off, whatever, it's definitely a game changer and something to consider. Most likely getting it at that price is a little bit more reasonable, but this is a gorgeous palette. I do love the Blitz Astrals in here. Some of the most beautiful shades I've ever seen. Here we have a couple shades here. These I think are the best ones, some of the best ones in the palette. We do have 2 golds in here. We have 2 blitzes on the end. So pink and one that's kind of like a greeny, purple, white, silvery shift. It's so, so gorgeous. Definitely love those shades. Looks like it was fate that brought it back into my collection, but like I said, I do think that this is a beautiful palette. Do not get me wrong on that, but I do think it is one to make sure that you're looking at tons of reviews, tons of swatches in different lights, and just make sure that you're going to be getting your money's worth because this is a pricey, pricey palette. All right, so we are halfway through this countdown. Let me know what you think my palette number 1 is. Next up, we have the palette in number 5. This is the Pat McGrath Mothership 10-pan in the Divine Rose 2 palette, and this is in her limited edition pink packaging. This is something I still get questions about to this day, which is this packaging. She did a very special launch when she launched Divine Rose 2, and you could do Divine Rose 1 in the pink packaging or Divine Rose 2 in the pink packaging or in the original black. So I ended up getting the second palette in this limited edition pink packaging because I already had Divine Rose 1 in my collection, but I haven't seen her do this packaging style since, so I'm so sorry it is no longer available, but I'm sure she'll do something like this in the future because it was such a hit. So this is Divine Rose 2, and this, you guys, has another very bright pink in it, very similar to Risque Rose I talked about before. So this is why it is ranked lower than some of the other palettes in my collection, but I do really love this as a brighter springtime palette. I love the purples in here, but once again, we have another rose type theme. So out of all of the rose palettes she has done, this is definitely one I'm grabbing quite a bit, but not as much as another one. So we'll get to that. But I think that as a color story, this one is, I think it's just brighter, and it's definitely something that I need to be in the right mood to use kind of thing, because it's very spring. It's very uplifting, and you do get some very bright, colorful, rose-toned looks with this. You can absolutely mute it down and just use like, you know, the peach here, the apricot on the top. So you can do that, but I find compared to Divine Rose 1, this is the one that I would pick instead if I want much more of a louder, bolder look on my eye. Palette number 4 is the Mega Mothership Celestial Divinity palette from this year's collection. The reason why it is ranked so high is because I feel like she did a great job with cutting the packaging, which you guys, normally it's not my favorite thing, but she included so many shades in this one that it is so worth it to me that she did that packaging cut, because look at how many shades are in here. They're only slightly smaller than the 10 pan palettes. They are smaller. Super, super stunning. Very, very colorful in here. You can do quite a few different looks, either more muted purples, golds. We have some berries in there. We do have a cool pop of green as well. This is a great palette for someone that wants to have quite a few colors, but also have the versatility of not paying too much money. It's still on the pricier end. Definitely worth it because she has not cut the formulation quality in this one. So if you don't recognize, we do have 2 palettes in here that are from a previous collection, which is the Star Wars collection. We have the Dark Galaxy on the left side and the Galactic Gold on the right side. So if you did miss out on the Star Wars collection, which I know a lot of people went nuts for, these are in here, which is amazing. There's also 6 new shades in here. The fact is that normally in some other palettes she's released, there's been some cuts to formulation quality as well as packaging to try to offer a lower price point. And in my opinion, I don't think that's right. But the fact that she was able to do a different packaging style to save on that cost, to give us quite a few shades to play with this holiday season, I am not mad at it. I do feel like this packaging is also, it's thinner than Rose Decadence, which I appreciate. It's better for storage. Rose Decadence is a bit thicker and it's harder to, you know, it takes up a lot of real estate basically. So I love the fact that this one is thinner as well. This is palette number 4. All right, palette number 3 is the last holiday quad from this year. This is the Luxe quad in Interstellar Icon. Out of the 3, my favorite this holiday. This is one that I think, because of the deep, like purpley burgundy, you can just use this palette by itself. Now keep in mind, we do have a little bit of fallout with these, not too bad, but a little bit. They're not quite the Blitz Astral like quality of fallout, because sometimes that can be quite heavy at times, but it does have a little bit. So definitely just do your eyes first, just to make sure you're not dropping anything onto your foundation or anything. Wowza. I am so in love with this one. It is definitely number 3. Such a good formulation also. This is one that was manufactured in the US, so you can absolutely tell that the shades are not quite the same as the Mothership ones that are smooth and that kind of thing, but it's weird because it's not like they're not smooth. They still have that pigment, they still have that smoothness. It's definitely a different kind of smooth, but it's still really, really beautiful. So this is where I go for like the vampy look, and I've been picking this one up a lot more than I thought. I actually smoke out with this one, the kind of like eggplant color. So it's not as dark as you think on a look, but I'm dead with this one. It is absolutely gorgeous. Palette number 3. We are down to the last 2 palettes in my collection in this ranking, and I am so excited to tell you guys about palette number 2. This is actually a very quick love. I've only received this, last week or something like that, but I've been playing with it nonstop. It is the eye look I am wearing today. This is the palette I got from her Black Friday sale this year. This is the Mothership 2 Sublime palette. Now this is a palette she's had around for quite some time, but for some reason, this color story just speaks to me so well. I love the emerald shade in here. I think it pops beautifully and works well together. I also think that the cooler tone pinks in here are so stunning and they work together beautifully. I just feel like I've just been obsessed with this one. It's been all over my lids all the time. Some of the Mothership palettes that she has released to me aren't as cohesive, I think, to every makeup skill level. Experts, you can absolutely put a look together no matter what. You've got the skill set, the confidence, you can do it. But there's some of us out there that are still amateurs, still learning, and especially if you're into luxury makeup like this, I think Getting a palette that is cohesive on its own is really important because then it gives you that confidence to put looks together. You don't have to worry about it looking ugly or muddled or anything like that because the shades have been chosen so beautifully. This is a palette that's been on my wish list for some time, but because of the fact that there were quite a few shades in here that I was like, like, do I have these kind of on the bottom row? Do I have these already in some shape or capacity? Probably, because I'm a reviewer and I do have a lot of products because I have a job to do, which is review makeup for you. But I do think that because I got it on a discount as well, it's kind of like the cherry on top because then it makes justifying purchasing it a little bit easier to do. Definitely worth checking out if you're interested in a Mothership palette. All right, now let's talk about my palette in first position. Let me know if you guys are right when you guessed earlier what would be my number one palette. This is the love of my life, to put it lightly. This is Divine Rose 1. I just love her. I don't know. She is so, so beautiful. I feel like the cool toneness of this palette to me was something different because when I did buy it, there were quite a few warm tone palettes out at the time. I was buying a lot of warm tone eyeshadow. This is a beautiful breath of fresh air, a little bit different, but so gorgeous on the lid. I feel like I could see brides wearing this on wedding days. The glam is so soft, yet so beautiful. It enhances your beauty so well. I don't know, this is a color story that is absolutely me, and I absolutely dig it. The amount of times I have worn this alone makes it worth the money. I did purchase this full price, and I will say that out of all of the Mothership palettes, this is the one I'd recommend first to anyone, unless you are not into rose theme. If you are not, certainly this isn't the palette for you. I would then maybe go towards Sublime, or actually, if it's your first Pat McGrath palette ever, and you want more of, you know, browns in that, then Bronze Seduction would be a good one. The amount of glam that I have gotten out of this and the amount of compliments I've gotten out of this has been absolutely insane. So this is definitely in palette number one position and always a highly recommended Mothership palette. What is your favorite Pat McGrath Labs palette? Is there a palette in my collection that you didn't see that you think I should own because it is so, so good? Do let me know all of your thoughts down below, and thank you so much for watching this ranking. I really hope it was helpful for you to choose a palette to invest in should you want to buy something from her line. Until my next one, guys, take care and stay safe. Bye, guys.
You and me, everything that we've been through has made us strong. You won't believe we've had our gray, but somewhere there's a light inside of us. It shows the way.